Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your Innkeeper Vase Odin, and we have a very special episode for you today. All purple, all the time. Last year, the Arkham Chronicle collaborated with some of the top content creators for Arkham Horror the card game. The goal was to take each of the existing 4 Mystic Investigators and create a deck designed to work in a 4-investigator party. The catch was that the party would consist of only the existing Mystic Investigators, and each content creator would make a deck without knowing everybody else's decks. Now, a year later, Arkham Chronicle has booked a room at the inn with a special goal in mind, having the Innkeeper come up with a similar deck for the latest Mystic Investigator, Father Mateo. I had to accept the challenge. After all, Father Mateo holds a special place in my heart. Being of Hispanic origin and growing up Catholic, I related to Mateo as soon as I found out about him. His spiritual struggle due to the existence of the mythos is fascinating to me, and I consider this factor every time I play with him. He stands tall as one of my favorite investigators. I have to confess, I did watch and listen to all of the All Purple All the Time videos and podcasts many months ago, but luckily I don't remember any of the decks that were made, not even a little bit. So this is ideal because part of the contest is to make the deck blind, so kind of works out. So what is my goal when making this deck? First, it has to be a deck that fits into a party of mystics. This means special considerations have to be pondered, especially for unique allies. Second, since I don't know what everybody else chose, I have to make many assumptions about the decks that everybody else made. And last, this is not supposed to be a solo deck or an optimal deck per se. It is strictly a deck that's supposed to synergize with an all-mystic party. Now, I do have a few advantages going into this. The biggest one is the card pool. Since the other decks were made, many cards have been added to the Mystic and Neutral card pools, giving this deck a few card choices that the others didn't have. So, let's take a look at Mateo and figure out the direction that we want to take him. First, we notice he has a very restrictive card pool. As of the recording of this video, basically all blessed cards are already in the Mystic class, except for one, Custom Ammunition, which is not going to be necessary for this party at all. Luckily, Father Mateo can take 5 experience during initial deck building, giving him some more interesting options. Taking a look at his stat line, Mateo has pretty excellent stats with a 4 in willpower and a 3 in both agility and intellect. The 2 in combat is fine because we're not really going to be needing that stat. Now with this stat line, Mateo can be pretty helpful with just about any task, including investigating, casting combat spells, and evading. Normally, I build Mateo as an aggressive combatant, but considering the party we're traveling with, I think that Akachi and Agnes are just much better at killing than he is. I'm assuming that both of these are going to be our frontline combatants, and they're going to be built that way. Jim is very versatile and can be built many ways, kind of like Mateo. With his current stat line, which is again very similar to Mateo's, and his ability to succeed on more skill tests than most investigators, I think that he's probably going to be built as a clue gatherer or kind of an all-arounder. I think Marie is pretty cut and dry in this case. She has the highest intellect of the mystics, so that means she's also going to probably be a clue gatherer for sure. So this leaves me with one question. Do I build Mateo as a combat character, a clue gatherer, an all-arounder, or a support character? I think with this group, we're going to be more successful if Mateo goes for support. He has some very helpful abilities, and a lot of mystic cards in this cycle lean heavily into chaos bag manipulation. So I think it could be interesting to see what we can come up with if we play to those abilities. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is some of the cards that everybody else is probably going to be taking because they're pretty much staples for Mystic decks, and whether I want to use them myself for this Mateo deck or not. So the first one is going to be Delve Too Deep. It is a very popular Mystic card. A lot of people who play Mystics regularly pretty much consider this an auto-include. In a 4 Mystic party, I think that this might be a little overkill. I think everybody else might be putting these in their decks. I'm not a huge fan of this card to begin with, so I think I'm going to skip on it. There's going to be already a lot of encounter deck hate coming out because of this card, and we just don't need any more of it. The next card that I want to talk about is St. Hubert's Key. I really like this card. For Mateo, it would be pretty good in most decks. In this case, though, because we're in a party of 4 Mystics, and this being a unique card, I think that some of the other players are going to be picking this for their investigators, specifically Marie. When she already has a 4 in both willpower and intellect, this card is a no-brainer in her deck, boosting both of those to a 5 and giving her a 2 horror soak. So I think we'll just leave this on the table for her to take it. If she doesn't, then I'm sure one of the other investigators will also have taken this card. So we'll go ahead and skip it and leave it for them. For ally slots, we'll start with Arcane Initiate. This is a very popular ally for Mystics, and for good reason. Helping you find your spells is probably a priority for most Mystic investigators. In this case, having a 4 Mystic party and having 4 Arcane Initiates out, since they're not a unique ally, you can't have that. You're looking at a lot of Doom that we'll be playing with, and I don't know if I want to take that kind of a risk. So we'll go ahead and leave Arcane Initiate to the other investigators. I think all of them, maybe most of them, if not all of them, will be taking this ally. Father Mateo, this deck is probably not going to be a spell heavy deck since we're building him for support, so I think we can skip out on this card. The next ally I wanted to talk about is David Renfield. He is an amazing ally for pretty much any Mystic deck with only a cost of 2, and he provides a 2 damage soak. That's pretty significant for a class that already has very little damage absorption capabilities. And then add on top of that the ability to get a willpower and gain extra resources. He's great, but because he is a unique ally, I think others will find a better use for him, specifically, Akachi or Agnes. So we'll go ahead and skip out on him and let them handle that as well. Next up is Alyssa Graham, another unique ally. She gives you a +1 to intellect and has an interesting ability, but the problem is she gets Doom added every time that you use it. The +1 intellect would be nice for Jim, Father Mateo, or Marie, but playing with Doom when everybody's probably already going to be running Arcane Initiate, that's probably going to be a problem. So I think most of us are probably going to figure this out and skip out on her. If anyone takes this ally, it'll probably be Marie or Jim. So we'll leave her for them in case they do want to run her. Now, this next decision is probably going to be kind of controversial. Rite of Seeking is a staple for Mystics. 99.9% of Mystics run this card because it's one of the only ways that we can investigate consistently using willpower, and the action compression is pretty nice. The limitation on it is pretty heavy, especially on a support deck like Father Mateo that we're building here. The potential to lose all your actions that remain means that you want to use this card as your last action. So you kind of have to set up your rounds where you're investigating as the very last action of your turn, and I don't think that's always going to be possible, especially on a support deck like this one. Because of this, I think we're just going to go ahead and skip this card. I know it's a controversial choice, but I think the benefits or the drawbacks far outweigh the benefits. So this leaves us with another option, Drawn to the Flame. An amazing card. I love this card for pretty much any Mystic deck and even non-Mystics that are able to take it. For 0 cost, you can get 2 free clues, and all you have to do is draw a card from the encounter deck. But I think we're already going to be getting a lot of encounter deck hate because of all the delves that are probably going to be occurring. So I don't think that we need any more. We'll go ahead and pass and try other ways to get our clues. So forbidden knowledge, and I'll include with this emergency cache, those are usually pretty much very important choices for mystics because their decks tend to be very resource heavy and expensive to play. In this Mateo deck, though, I think because we're going so heavy in support, we're not going to have such an expensive deck and we won't need the extra resources. Another popular choice for mystics is Blinding Light. It allows you to evade for a cost of 2 using willpower. Now that the Forgotten Age has released a Mists of R'lyeh, I think that is a much better option. You get 4 uses for the same cost of 2. Sure, it takes an arcane slot, but I think it's definitely a better option, specifically in this Father Mateo deck. So we'll skip out on Blinding Light. Now that we've gotten the cards we're not adding out of the way, we'll go ahead and just do a brief summary of the cards we did select, and then we'll go each one individually and explain why we made those decisions. So for hand slots, we picked Flashlight, just 1, the Spirit Athame, and the Chthonian Stone. That's 3 items for a hand slot. That's decent. Arcane slot, I think 6 is the sweet spot for most Investigator decks, so we went ahead and got 6 arcane cards. For the accessory slot, we have the Holy Rosary. I think it's a much better choice than St. Hubert's Key. Fine Clothes to help with a little bit of damage soak, and Parlay Test. For our ally, we went with Olive McBride, a new ally from the Forgotten Age, which we'll go into more detail in a minute. And then this deck, because it's such heavy in support, it's got a lot of single-use event and skill cards, and this is for extreme support of the other mystics. The Counterspell, Dark Prophecy, and Premonition, which allows some Chaos Bag manipulation, Quantum Flux, and Ward of Protection for other assistance, and then all the skill cards that will help for those very important skills that all the other mystics will be making. We're running only a single copy of Flashlight, and this is only to pick up a spare clue here and there if needed. Father Mateo's investigatability is at 3 already, which is decent for the low shroud locations. Coupled with his skill cards that we've thrown in, he can gather a few clues here and there, and the Flashlight can be handy for higher shroud locations if necessary. I don't think that I need anything else from him for that. He is not a major clue gatherer for this build. We do have other mystics in the party that are probably going to be able to handle that a little bit better. So single Flashlight just to kind of help out here and there. Then we're going to add in the Spirit Athame. This card is a really awesome card for mystics, giving you a free +2 to a skill test using a spell. And you can also use it to fight. So if I get caught in a pinch, that +2 to fight will boost Mateo's fight to a 4. Pretty handy, but the +2 to a spell skill boost is pretty awesome. Because we're going with a Chaos Bag manipulation and also support build, I went ahead and included the Chthonian Stone. This lets us seal a bad symbol. 1 token, decent. The cost of 3 is a little high, but for now we'll use that. Later on we'll probably be replacing this with Grotesque Statue. For our first set of arcane slot cards, 2 copies of Clarity of Mind. Because we're a support character, most mystics do end up taking a bit of horror because of some backfire from spells like Shriveling and Ward of Protection. So I think having Clarity of Mind, even though it's not the greatest card in terms of healing or horror healing, it'll be useful. It's one of the few options that we have right now. Later on, Moment of Respite will really help. But still, I think Moment of Respite, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can only use it on yourself. So this is still going to hang in there as an option. And later on, we can also use this to help power one of the other cards that I threw in there, which is Torrent of Power. And we'll talk about that in a moment. One of the best Mystic cards added in the Forgotten Age cycle, the Mists of R'lyeh, is a great card. It filled in a gap that Mystics were missing, which was some decent evade and consistent evade cards. This one is great. Father Mateo in this build will be doing a lot of evading. This card specifically will be his main spell, I think. He'll be evading a lot of the monsters and bad guys so that the other investigators who are more powerful, like Akachi and Agnes, would be able to take them down without fear of retaliation. Plus, it gives some nice action economy to help us move around the board after evading. Then, of course, the Mystic staple. No Mystic deck is complete without shriveling the number one Mystic card. Because of the way the game is, you do have to fight sometimes. You can't avoid it, even as a support character. So this will help us at least kill some things that come in and try to stop us. And, assist in knocking out a couple of other enemies that the others haven't taken out. I've also included one copy of Holy Rosary. It'll give us a +1 to our willpower. The reason I put in one only is because I needed some of the other card spots, and to be honest, I don't plan on doing a whole lot of spell casting with this one. So a lot of the spells are mostly going to sit there, and they're only going to be a backup. So the +1 to willpower is not as necessary as for other investigators, but it's still nice, and the horror soak also helps. So I threw it in there. If it comes out, then it'll be an extra kind of bonus, but not a necessity. And what support deck would be complete without the ability to help with parlay tests? Find Clothes is pretty nice with a 1 cost only in a body slot, which we don't have anything else filling that slot. It'll give us some damage and horror soak, but it'll also help reduce parlay tests by 2, which could be extremely handy, allowing the other investigators to be picking up clues and fighting while we finish off the parlay test. For our ally, we went with Olive McBride. Because we are support and Chaos Bag Manipulation, I think she's going to be amazing for that, because the 3 Horror Soak is useful, but even more so is the low cost of 2 and the ability to reveal 3 Chaos tokens. Unfortunately, it's not going to help others. You can only use this on yourself, but the benefit here is by having Olive McBride for our own treachery and skill tests, we can free up some of our skill cards and single-use events to use on the other investigators that might need them even more. Because Father Mateo gets 5 experience points to start with, and I used 1 for the Spirit Athame, I had 4 left over, and it took me a while to really make a decision on what cards I was going to upgrade to or purchase with those experience points. In this case, I decided to go with 2 copies of Counterspell. I think it fit in very nicely with the theme of the deck. Very awesome support card, basically canceling a bad token. Super useful when, especially when the other investigators will be making really important skill tests. I think this could be a game winner. Like Olive McBride, Dark Prophecy can only be used on your own skill tests, and I'm mostly putting this in this deck so that Father Mateo can use it for his skill tests and pass his own skill tests, freeing up skill cards and single-use events so that he can use them to support the other investigators. You can kind of use this on other investigators with Premonition, and so Premonition will let you reveal a Chaos token, at which point you can play Dark Prophecy and reveal 5. Then you can pick one of the 5, seal it under Premonition, and then use that token, don't take any tests that turn, and let the other investigators use that token for whatever test they're going to take. Kind of gimmicky, very hard to pull off. That's not really what I'm going for here. This is mostly for Father Mateo's own skill test, so his other cards can be used for the other investigators. And speaking of Premonition. I love this card. When it first was released, I wasn't sure about it. I said, I don't understand why they would put this card in the game. It really makes no sense. You seal a token and you know when it's going to come out. What is the point of this? But now in actual play, I am a believer. I am a true believer of Premonition, and it's become one of my favorite cards for Mystics, or at least for Chaos Manipulation Mystics. It's really cool. By sealing the token, you can commit cards, or you can prevent yourself from committing cards unnecessarily to skill tests, because you're going to pass or you're going to fail. So you can keep your very valuable skill cards and single-use events for other skill tests if necessary. Also, you can kind of work it so you know what icon or what the token's going to come out. So you pull a dummy test on something else so that you can waste the bad token and maybe get another shot. Kind of like pulling a time warp almost, Anyways, I really like it. So I'm going to include it in this deck, and it works perfectly with Father Mateo's Chaos Bag. Manipulation and support for the other Mystics. I think this will really be helpful for the team of Mystics, and I can't wait to see it in action. Because this deck has a ton, I think I counted 17 total single-use events and skill cards altogether. They're cards that are basically going to just be played quickly, very quickly, and they're going to be going to the discard pile, sometimes 3 or 4 in a turn. So Quantum Flux is a nice card to have. Of course, only one copy is really necessary, but it's really nice when I do have a lot of these really good skill cards that I've used up to be able to reshuffle them back in the deck and possibly recur them. Plus, it replaces itself, so you get to draw another card, possibly one of the ones you reshuffled, so that this card could be really helpful, especially in a 4-player game where we're committing a ton of cards to a ton of skill tests. And just like Shriveling, no Mystic deck would be complete without Order Protection. All the other guys are probably putting this in their decks. I think I put this in every single Mystic deck that I make, and usually 2 copies. So it's going in there for obvious reasons. It's amazing to be able to cancel an encounter card by just, or a treachery card by just taking a horror and paying a resource. Really great. We're definitely throwing this in the deck. Defiance is an interesting card. A wild icon is okay. The ability in this card letting you cancel one of the bad tokens basically equates to an additional bonus of probably a +2 or so to the skill check. So not bad at all. And this deck has a couple of other cards that could help boost this card to an even higher status and do some interesting shenanigans with it. Once we get going, this card, with some experience, upgrading this card to Defiance, the higher level one, it's going to be awesome. That's a really good card. But for right now, I think this one will be fairly useful. Not as much so as the other ones, but why not? I'm also going to be going in with 2 copies of Guts. Initially, I was going to go with Uncage the Soul, 2 copies of that, because that also has 2 willpower icons. But I think for this deck, card draw is important. We don't have a lot of options for card draw, and being able to commit for 2 willpower icons and then draw a card, it's going to be really important in this deck. And then also Uncage the Soul, you can only use it on your own spells, and this deck doesn't really have a tremendous amount of spells or even high cost cards for that matter. This deck runs very quick and very low on resources, so I think Guts is a much better option than Uncage the Soul. Another amazing card for this deck, Torrent of Power. Pretty great. I have a feeling that I won't be using a lot of my spells, so they'll be, just sitting there with a ton of charges on them, unused. Well, Torrent of Power answers that problem by allowing us to use a charge and giving our friends or ourselves an additional bonus to our skill tests, specifically willpower skill tests. For just 2 charges, you can get 5 willpower icons. That's pretty amazing. If you're using some other icons, it's still really versatile. If you use 2 charges, you're still getting a +3 to a skill test. Not bad, especially if you have a spell that you put on the board just in case and you haven't been using it. It's really nice to still get those charges to some use. So Torrent of Power is definitely going to be very helpful, especially for a spell that, say, later on is not going to be as useful. If we have 2 encounter type spells on the board, like a Shriveling and a Miss of Relia, we may just want to use up the charges on one of them, and this is a great way to do that. So really useful bonus for our friends to be able to succeed on those crucial tests. And of course, with a lot of skill cards and a lot of assistance for our allies to be passing their skill tests, of course we're going to go with Unexpected Courage. 2 wild icons is really powerful and definitely helpful in a number of situations and a number of skill tests. So again, why not? And that does it for the Father Mateo All Purple All the Time deck tech. Please make sure you check out, if you haven't already, all the other content creators' deck ideas. You can check them out on ArkhamDB or their corresponding pages and channels. I wanted to give a very special thank you to Arkham Chronicle for including me in this amazing project with All Purple all the time. And this was very exciting when I got the email regarding this project and being a part of it. I was super stoked when I heard it was Father Mateo as well. So I can't wait to see what else comes of this. If we do other colors or if we end up taking these for a spin, it's going to be a lot of fun either way. And thank you all for watching and listening to this. Please check out the other content creators' decks and see what you think of them. And let me know in the comments if you think that I made a good decision or what you would have done differently. Also, you can check the decks out all on ArkhamDB, and all the links for everything will be in the comments below. I'll talk to you.
Oh, hello, my special guest. I'm just walking over to our trash can in the back of the inn. It seems a guest has complained about noises coming from the can. It's probably just some rats. Oh, I remember putting that there. I bet there's a lot of rats. Let's just squash them and bash them a little bit. Ugh.